fast trains that use very, very little energy and so on and so forth. So that is how I got into technology, formally. But before then, my grandmother was actually my first engineering teacher. So she used to make all sorts of stuff. I come from a village, I come from a village called Dutuni in the Limpopo province. In fact, if you are on N1 to reach my village, you actually turn 3 times. Yeah. When you're on N1, this road N1, you turn in a place called Makado. Now it's called Lutrikat. And the first traffic lights are actually in my village. So my grandmother was my first engineering teacher. One of the things that she used to make clay pots. How many of you have seen clay pots? We used to use them to cook. If you go to villages, we used to cook using clay pots. And I will accompany her to go and collect the best clay. When I tell people who are your age, and I tell them that clay is found next to the river, they don't believe me. Best clay has to be next to the river. And I will go with her to look for the best clay. Later on, when I was an engineering student, I realized that whole process of looking for clay, they call it material selection. You have sophisticated softwares to look for the best material, whether it is Toyota, looking for the material to make the car, whether it is Samsung looking for the material to make cell phones. It is all about material selection. And you have all sorts of techniques. But my grandmother knew just how to get the best clay. Then she will bring the clay back to form a pot. A pot is a very complicated structure because it has to be round and it has to be hollow. So you have to decide how thick the walls of the pot are going to be. If it is too thin, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to break. If it is too thick, what do you think is going to happen? You will need to put more fire in order to heat it. So it's a balance between the two. So, and that whole process of finding just the right size. When I went to engineering, they even have a bombastic word. They call it optimization. Sishaba, you will know when people are restructuring organizations, they will say we are optimizing. Very, very important concept. My grandmother understood the concept of optimization without those fancy mathematical equations that I learned when I went to engineering school. And then after she has made this pot, and by the way, if I ask some of my students, make a pot, they want a software called AutoCAD. AutoCAD is a software that you use to design structures. And my grandmother could do this thing without AutoCAD. Then after that, she will put the pot in the sun. Why would she put it in the sun? So that it can dry, isn't it, And then, after it is dry, she will not go and cook with it. Why? It's not strong enough. What she will do is to heat the pot in a big fire. And she will heat it over a long period of time. And you can see that the pot now is red because it is really hot. And she will allow it to cool very, very slowly. If it cools too quickly, it's going to crack. And when I'm in engineering school, they call that whole process of cooling stuff annealing. For those of you who are interested in engineering, will learn about annealing. So they call this thing annealing. And my grandmother did not even know what annealing was. In fact, there is a fancy mathematical equation that many people, if they want to scare you off, they will show you. It's called the Bossman Equation. to describe that process of cooling. My grandmother understood the concept completely. She did not know who Bossman was, let alone his equation. And then after that, my grandmother would knock each pot and listen to it to determine whether it is a good or bad pot. If it rings for a long time, that ringing sound is a good pot. If it rings for a short time, it is a bad pot. So when I was an engineering student in the United States, if it rings for a long time, they have a fancy term for it. They call it lightly damped structure. If it rings for a long time, it's a damped structure. It means that not all the moisture has gotten out. It might also mean that there are holes in the walls of the pot. And my grandmother understood all those concepts without understanding this concept of damping, whether it is lightly or damped structure. And then as she was growing old, I realized that my grandmother was throwing away good pots. Do you know why? Anybody? Why was my grandmother thinking good pots were bad pots now? If you just think about it. Yeah? No. These are the pots that have just been created. The reason was because she was getting old. Her hearing was deteriorating. So the concept of using a person to decide means you are subjected to many, many other things. And when I come to talk about automation, you will understand why automation is important. To automate that process, you automate it not because you want to remove people from decision making, but because when you rely on a human being, it depends on how long they slept last night. It depends on whether they are becoming older, for this case of my grandmother. So when later on, I went to the University of Cambridge to do a PhD. So I wanted to take that idea of listening to structures to determine whether they are good structures or bad structures into the fourth industrial revolution. And this is what you find in cars today. Cars are diagnosing themselves. They will tell you that, now you have to go and see a mechanic. And the reason for that is because they are listening to those sounds, whether it is the sound of the engine, and they are determining whether the car is good or not. So that is what I did a PhD on. And later on, one of my students, now Dr. Usisiwe Vilakazi, she was using the same concept to determine whether the electricity grid was good or not. And when she went to University of Oxford to do a PhD, she used the same procedure to determine whether a patient in intensive ward is in good condition or not, just by listening to all this data. So this is really what the fourth industrial revolution is all about. It is about building technologies that are able to do those things that used to be done by human beings. If when I was 15 years old, you would have told me that I will talk to a machine and the machine will be able to understand what I am saying, I wouldn't have believed you. But today we know, Siri is one example, that you can talk to machines and they are able to understand what you are saying. And they are able to understand because of a piece of technology called artificial intelligence, which is actually a very old concept. The term artificial intelligence was coined in 1956 in the United States to explain an emerging technology where we make machines intelligent. And artificial intelligence is changing almost all aspects of our lives. For example, when you go to, BMW, where they make cars, she will realize that very few people are there because you have machines that are intelligent, that are doing the work. Why do companies prefer machines over human beings? For one, machines can't join a union, COSATU. They can't go on strike. You can make them work for 24 hours and they don't get tired. So that is really the reason why things are actually being automated. And this is what the fourth industrial revolution is all about. It is about using technologies to augment those tasks that are normally done by human beings. I remember Sishaba. The first time I had a pilot saying that the flight is not going to be landed by a pilot. The machine is going to land itself. I don't know whether they used to even announce it. Now we take it for granted that many of these key decisions are no longer done by a human pilot. So this automation is happening, and there are three things that are going to happen. The first one is that some jobs are just going to disappear. Some jobs are simply going to disappear. And by the way, this is not a new phenomenon. For those, I was not there. Maybe Sishaba, you can remember this a little bit. When you used to go to a lift, there will be somebody inside who will assist you to go to whatever floor you are going to go. It actually seems quite bizarre that they will employ somebody to do such a task. And then they automated that process by putting that pad where you can just press. We think it's an easy technology. It was not easy. Before, they will have all sorts of weights that they are going to put so that the elevator is going to stop in the right floor. And if they don't do the settings well, it won't stop at the right floor. Now, you go there, you press where you are going yourself. That human being that used to do there is no longer employed. That human being has lost their job. So some jobs are simply going to disappear in the fourth industrial revolution. Secondly, many jobs are going to change. Now, we know that artificial intelligence is actually changing the way medicine is done. I spent some time at Samsung in South Korea, where they will have brass for women, which monitors the electric conductivity of the breasts and monitor the data. And if there is just a slight change, then it will inform your doctor. And then it will even book an appointment for you with your doctor so that you can go and be checked for the possibility of breast cancer. It's a screening tool, which basically means instead of you going to have a mammogram every 3 years, you can be screened every day by a machine. Early diagnosis now is much, much more possible with those technologies. So a doctor in that instance is a doctor who understands both medicine and technology. So that job is going to change in the sense that the people who used to do it will have to understand more about technology than ever before. So many jobs are changing right in front of our eyes. Then the third thing that is going to happen is that new jobs are going to emerge. There is a whole industry that South Africa, unfortunately, is not participating in. In Africa, it is dominated by Kenya. Globally, it's dominated by India. So what happens is that they have this data that are collected by, whether it is in hospitals, whatever, and you have to label it so that a machine can be able to learn those data. It's called data annotators. That job did not exist before. In fact, it does not actually exist in South Africa. It exists in India, it exists in Kenya. So these are new jobs that are emerging as a result of this thing. I mean, data scientist. I mean, in the 80s, there was no such a thing such as data scientist. Today you do have a data scientist. So the question is, given all these changes, what do you do? How do you prepare yourselves so that given all these changes that are happening around us, you still have a role to play in the economy? What are some of the skills that you need in order for you to become the sort of business man or woman who will create the sort of technologies that many of us can only dream of? Think of something like Facebook or even Twitter. Now, these were created by people of your age. When Mark was creating Facebook, he was only 19, and Facebook is one of the largest companies in the world. How do we make sure that our people are not spectators in that economy, but they are also participants? What sort of skills do we need? Now, the first skill that you need is what I call multidisciplinary skills. If you traditionally go to a South African university, of course, if you come to University of Johannesburg, we have addressed those issues long time ago. But if you go to other universities, which I'm not going to mention, you know them, when you go and study engineering, they only teach you about engineering. When you go and study about sociology, they only teach you about sociology. But today, you need people who understand more than one thing. If you are going to create an app that is going to listen to somebody speaking in isiZulu and translate it into English, it goes without saying that such a person who designed that must understand linguistics, languages, and secondly, must also understand technology. And the Americans actually perfected this. Part of the reason why you don't really see the Facebook of Germany, which is a technologically sophisticated country, is because their education is too specialized. Now, when I was an undergraduate student, I started my education at the University of Cape Town. I can mention the university, Sishawa. And I was studying mechanical engineering. And round about March, I decided that I have had enough about on University of Cape Town, so I'm going to go to United States. So when I arrived there, the thing that shocked me was when they told me that, no, you have to do engineering courses, but you have to do human and social science courses. In fact, you have to do 12 of them. And the 12 courses that I took 3 acting courses. So the reason why you don't see me in Isibaya or Generation or The River is not because of lack of talent. I'm actually a trained actor. I took 3 courses, I took a course in philosophy. I took 6 economic classes. I took history classes. And this is what multidisciplinarity is all about. If you check the qualifications of, because for example, if somebody wants to come up with social network, it goes without saying that if they understand technology and maybe sociology, they probably have, a winning formula, So part of the reason why many of these apps are created in the United States is simply because their education is multidisciplinary. So which means your interest must be broad. You must be interested in technology, but you must be interested in other things, in photography. Somebody who creates a camera for Samsung must also be interested in both technology and photography, you know. So those are some of the things. These are the eras that we live in. And I hope you are going to take this seriously. You're going to skill yourselves, and we are going to see you creating businesses, creating apps that we can download and buy so that you can actually be able to succeed as a business person. So what I'm going to do, Simpiwe, I'm going to give 10 scholarships to 10 people who can come to the University of Johannesburg and study for the certificate in artificial intelligence. So thank you very much.
Four questions to this side, to that side. Four questions. Questions. The floor is now open for imibuzo. Okay, can we go back to our roving microphones so that we ask questions? There are 3 people this side. 1, 2, 3. 3. Now 3 this side. Any other question? Okay, ila baba ngatholi scholarship. Asize ngapha. And guys, a question not preceded by the day you met. Ne? Cool.
Good day. Yes. Good day to everyone. Okay. Prof, my question is, do you have mechatronics at the University of Johannesburg?
No, thank you very much. We do not have mechatronics, and I will tell you the reason why. I am not a big fan of qualifications that I don't think are necessary. I'll tell you the reason why. There is a university that has a course called aeronautical engineering. And people come to me and say, should I study aeronautical engineering? I said, of course, don't study aeronautical engineering. And they say, why? I said, this is a mechanical engineering course. Everybody knows about that. It is a mechanical engineering course that somebody wanted to package it for marketing purposes. The fact of the matter is, if you go and study aeronautical engineering, you will probably be in the same classroom with a mechanical engineer 95% of the time. And even those courses that are so-called aeronautical engineers are actually courses that mechanical engineers can be able to get it. No. They study them also, maybe in a much more general form, because aerospace is just a special case of broader mechanical engineering. Now, let's talk about mechatronics. You can't study a mechanical engineer. Mechatronics was a degree that was created to make people be competent in mechanical and electronic engineering. That is what mechatronics is all about. But today, you can't study mechanical engineering without electronics. So many of the courses, electronic courses that you're going to encounter, actually, you will study them if you are studying a degree in mechanical engineering. So if you come and do a mechanical engineering course and take more, because a degree there will be courses that you have to take, and they will have courses that we call electives, which is courses that you can choose depending on which direction you would like to take. I would just say on your electives, choose more electronics engineering courses. Then you have a degree that will allow you to go and do mechatronic things, you know. So we don't do it. And by the way, Cambridge does not have mechatronics. MIT does not have mechatronics. So it is, yeah. I'm not saying this because we don't have it, you know. In fact, there's only one university that has it. I think it's University of Cape Town, and Stellenbosch, and also I think the one in Nelson Mandela. But all those people, they go and work as mechanical engineers at the end of the day. No. Thank you. I saw another hand. Yeah. If you could introduce yourself so that at least I can put a name to the face.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ntsako Maluleke.
Soko
Ntsako Maluleke.
or Tsako?
I wanted to ask, what are the qualifications to obtain this opportunity of the offered scholarships? And then how do we apply for these scholarships? And if you already have a post-matric qualifications, can you still participate in the opportunity?
No, absolutely, absolutely. So the criteria, Mr. Masiza is going to give me the names of 10 people. So he will determine who amongst you deserve to study this for this qualification. Now, if you have post-matric qualification, you know, long time ago, we used to have something called adult-based education. This was for people who could not read or write. And you will have classes normally in the evening to try to get them to learn how to read and write. And the idea was to eliminate illiteracy. But today, illiteracy is different. You have people with university degrees, for example, who are technologically illiterate. So they need to be given adult-based education. At the University of Johannesburg now, everybody who comes, irrespective of what they study, they have to take a course in artificial intelligence. And they get a separate certificate. And they can't graduate without completing it. And the reason for that is because we have realized that in today's age, you have to be literate in matters of technology. We're not saying you should be a programmer or anything like that, but you should know what these technologies are, what they are about, where they have been applied, what are some of the pitfalls, and how can you use them in your work. You know. So we particularly welcome people with post university or post matric certificates so that they can skill themselves with the new skills that are needed for the era in which we live in. There was another hand there. What is your name again? Tokozan.
I was asking them, since you've introduced the course for artificial intelligence, I wanted to know that, does it consist of the modules for coding and web design?
No.
Okay.
No. Because they are meant to make our graduates technologically literate. If you want to be a coder, then you can go and take a course in engineering or Department of Computer Science on artificial intelligence. Then they will teach you about R coding, how you can be able to create an AI system, how you can integrate it with an app, and so on and so forth. Those are much more technical subjects. But we have them. We have all these courses for you to be able to take and skill yourself. Yeah.
Morning, Prof. My name is Jerry Debe. I'm also a product of an institution. I just want to ask a question because there seems to be a disconnect between the higher institutions of learning, and there still is a disconnect between the higher institution of learning and secondary schools, insofar as the fourth industrial revolution is concerned, because we still have schools that are still grappling with end-user computer, such that I can attest to that, because even when I was enrolled at the institution, I had to go through ICT and so forth. But still, having been trained in that field and so forth, what happens now, it seems like your skills dissipate when you get into or get absorbed into this institution, because there aren't facilities that enable for you to practice that which you have acquired in this institution. So what are you doing as the institution to forge a relationship with the very same institutions?
Yeah. Look, I mean, the University of Johannesburg is special in many ways. One of the other ways in which it is special is because it is actually involved in schooling. We have a high school, one of the top high schools in the country is called UJ Metropolitan High School. You know, it used to be called Raucol before. That is called UJ Metropolitan, which is fully integrated in what we do as a university. We also have a primary school in Soweto. You know, the difference between this primary school and other primary schools is that you can't teach unless you have a master's degree. You know, it's in our Soweto campus. Obviously, the competition to get into our primary school is actually quite stiff. If the competition to get into our high school, like one of the biggest problems that we are facing now, is that the lecturers want to send their kids to our high school. And our high school has a specific minimum, maximum family earning that you have to qualify. So we wanted to give people who could not afford private education a private type of education. You know, that's what we wanted to do. So obviously our lecturers will not qualify for that because they earn above a certain level, you know. So, and our mission was really to give opportunities to people who would not necessarily have it. And the primary school is the same, and we are teaching courses in artificial intelligence to young people. In fact, there is a book, Introduction to Artificial Intelligence for Kids, that was written at the University of Johannesburg. So we are fully integrated, and we also have a science center in Soweto, you know, where we welcome high schools to come and learn about science and perform experiments and so on and so forth. And the people who run this are actually serious people. For example, the past director of the science center, which is focused on high schools, is now a dean at the Nelson Mandela University, and he's a well-known physicist. You know, so we are fully integrated. Now the question is, how do we do this at scale? And the University of of Cape Town has just announced an online school that is trying to do that at scale. You know, instead of targeting 60 primary school students or 1,000 secondary students, how do we target a much broader community? And those are some of the things that we are thinking about. So online platforms, making sure that our courses are available for anybody who wants to watch them, will be one of the mechanisms that we will implement to broaden access. Any other question? Why is it only the left-wingers who are asking?
Sir, Professor, one online question coming through your way. That side, please.
Good morning, Prof. We have a question from Kagiso Nkuna, who's streaming on Facebook. His question says, what are the advantages of nanotechnology, and how can the youth venture into the business of nanotechnology? Thank you.
You see, nanotechnology is when you do things at a very small scale. Like small. For example, you build a car that you can't even see. You have to have a microscope to be able to see it. And it can move. Of course, you can imagine the implication of this on security. It basically means I can have things here that are monitoring what you're doing without you seeing them. It basically means I can build things that I can put in your blood to fight diseases. That's nanotechnology. So these are very small things, you know. And the science of nano is actually different from the science of macro. You know, if you throw a stone up and it comes down, it will behave different from if it was done at a nanoscale. There is even a whole field of understanding that whole science is called quantum mechanics. Einstein and Max Planck were responsible for creating that science. Unfortunately, nanotechnology is not as developed in the African continent as we would like it to be. At University of Johannesburg, we're using it in water treatment, for example. You know, how do you have these little particles that you can use to clean the water and so on and so forth, you know. So it is, nanotechnology is very, very important. And, you know, when we, because in the future, this is what is going to happen. In the future, these devices shall not exist. Where's my phone? A phone shall not exist in the future. You know, you will wear glasses and you will be able to see keypads, and you will see people just punching on the, already you see it in movies, isn't it? You know, they're just punching on the, on air. Of course, now it looks like somebody has gone mad, you know. And the part of the reason is because the devices to listen will be so small that you won't be able to see. You know, those are the developments of nanotechnology. And it's something that we have to take quite seriously. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Professor. Just two questions.
Maybe from the right wing, because the left wingers have been in charge.
No,
now is the time for the right wingers.
If you do say, Mogusho and Professor Senzanjalo, we'll take 1, 2. Okay. This side. May we please have a roving mic this side? So.
Thank you. Morning, Professor. My name is Lerato Mufokeng. I saw that the University of Johannesburg has opened an online course on what do you call this? No, what we are talking about.
Artificial intelligence.
Yes, artificial intelligence, thank you. Now, I wanted to understand if the course is similar to the one that will be provided to the 10 people that will be getting the scholarship.
Yeah, it will be similar. It will be very similar. Yeah.
In classes, this lady, in classes, there you go.
Good morning, Professor. Good morning, everybody. I am Sandel Wampinga. I realize as we discuss that AI is very broad, and if you could mention perhaps 5 courses that at least one can undertake to keep themselves up to par with everything that is happening, as we've heard, Guti. Studying in mechatronics is the same as doing in mechanical engineering. So what are those courses, if you could mention at least 5 that one can look into that will keep them up to pace or up to par with the field of AI? Thank you.
No, there are basically 3 types of AI, I mean, according to me. You have what is called computational intelligence. You have what is called soft computing. And then you have the dominant type called machine learning. Machine learning is the use of data and statistics to build intelligent machines. So I would say that if you take an introduction to machine learning, it will actually be on the right path, given what is happening now. It has been the most successful part of AI. And then it will teach you about neural networks. It will teach you about how to train them. It will teach you how to program. And if you can learn about neural networks, for example, then another algorithms, whether support vector machines, becomes easier to learn, and so on and so forth. So introduction to machine learning will be the course that I recommend. So thank you very much. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you, Professor. From me, Professor, are we our worst enemy when it comes to artificial intelligence? Are we our worst enemy? Is it going to be true that the natural evolution of me and you ngesinye isikhathi izophela until there are robots?
No, look, I mean, it is clear that I don't know whether any one of you have seen our robot called Spot on the internet. We have a robot that can do almost anything you can think of. I welcome you to come and visit Spot. Masiza, you probably have seen it on the internet. Expensive, but we are actually quite happy about that. And this is, we are replacing ourselves. We are replacing ourselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. The Japanese say that it is actually criminal to expect that which can be done by a machine to be done by a human being. Replace the human being and make a human being does those things that a machine cannot be able to do. Like console somebody who is bereaved. You know, like, call a friend to encourage them. Machines can't do that. Those are things that are supposed to be done by human beings. So let us welcome these developments and not be afraid to get into the future. Thank you very much.
Siyabonga kakhulu, Professor. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Chiliti, thank you so much. One more time, guys, one more time. Okay, thank you. All right, right now, it is my great pleasure as a brother and a friend, this next facilitator. Brightest is also a international keynote speaker and a facilitator and author himself. Also introducer panel yake. They'll be touching on HR directors roundtable, the fourth industrial revolution, of course, the future of world of work, ensuring good job opportunities for youth. Ladies and gentlemen, Brightest Moyo.
Sanmonan, entet mina leli gas lami ngicela ukuba ne home advantage, so ngicela a bit of noise ne ithings of via vie bese ngiyazi introducer bese ning welcome kanconywana uNimrod bekazothi welcome my brother siphiwe moyo. Yeah, you know, most of you have to have home advantage. Thank you so much for having me, guys. Let me get straight to it. So we're going to have what we call an HR director roundtable. So I have two incredible guests, and we're going to chat. And some of the things that we've chatted about, Prof. Marala has chatted about, we're just going to delve into them, but from an employer point of view. So Babuza, my employer, you know, what is it that you want from us so that we can kick those doors and get into corporate? So we're going to have a chat about that, because we used to keep saying that the world of work, the future world of work is coming, the future is coming, it is coming, it is coming. Baby, are you coming? Are you? But it's no longer coming, right? It is here. Would you agree? So we're going to introduce my two guests. When they come, and welcome them. The first one is Ubabu A.B. Hotle, who's the Executive Director of HR at Mercedes-Benz South Africa. Make some noise! Abi, thank you so much. You can take that one. Welcome, welcome. Our second guest from Bridgestone, South Africa, is the Head of Talent Development and as well as the Learning Academy. So, Speti Kok. Ubotaki Hlalele. Make some noise for Botaki! Thank you so much for joining us. All right, so we're going to try and get straight to it so that most of the questions are going to come from the floor. Is that okay, Ne? So when you think about, welcome, gentlemen, when you think about some of the things that we've spoken about, and Uba Marala has spoken about, it looks like this fourth industrial revolution is really changing the world of work. And I just want to know from you, maybe as an introduction from you, that we know that 4R has created major change in the way we live, play, and work. How has that impacted the kind of opportunities you have in Mercedes-Benz South Africa, at Bridgestone? I don't know who wants to start.
Okay. Well, I can start. Thank you very
Thanks,
much, and good morning, everyone. It's very good to be here. And thank you for that warm welcome to Orange Farm. So thank you.
Sure.
Well, the world of work has changed. I don't think that the world of work is changing. It has changed, and it has changed significantly over the last decades. If you look at how we go about building cars, for example, and you take the example of Mercedes-Benz, or you could use any other brand, but of course you have to use Mercedes-Benz.
Of course.
The way in which we build cars has changed. Whereas many decades ago, you would have gone into a body shop, which is the first stage of building cars, and you would have found hundreds of people carrying equipment, carrying body parts, and assembling these parts. You today have a shop such as the body shop, run predominantly by robots.
Sure.
But you still have a role for human beings in that space. The change that you now see is the kinds of skills that you need to run the body shop would be completely different from the skills that you would have needed in the past. So today you need a cell tech operator. This is an artisan, a very sophisticated artisan, who most likely would be a millwright as a primary trade.
Not a motor mechanic.
Not a motor mechanic. They would be a millwright, and on top of that, they would have other skills that enable them to interact with the robot in the body shop or anywhere in the production line. So the world of work has changed. It does mean that we need different types of skills, and it does mean that we become a lot more smarter in how we do our job. And why you do that because in the end, you want to have the efficiencies that you require as a business. So you don't want to take the same time that it took you 100 years ago to build a car. You want to do it in a much shorter space of time. You want to do it a lot more intelligently. You want to do it with much more sophisticated skills, and you want to ensure that in the end, you are able to create value for everyone involved in the business.
Can I just stay with that example for a bit?
Yeah.
So you have somebody who is a millwright, and now because of the changing world has had to have additional skills and have a slightly different job. So I'm getting from that if I had a trade, I didn't waste my time necessarily, because it is much easier to train or reskill somebody who's a millwright than to take somebody who was not in that environment at all for this kind of skill. Would that be correct?
It's not a waste at all. And that's why we invest heavily in training, whether you are inside or outside. We invest heavily in training. So, in the past, you would have had just a normal operator, if I use that example of the body shop.
Sure.
You would have had a normal operator who most likely would be somebody with math and science, and most likely not any qualification. And, we would invest, for example, in that individual, help them acquire the trade, get them trained as millwright, get them trained as cell tech operators, and you still retain them. So that's why I say, for me, and I agree with what Prof said, we have this view that the fourth industrial revolution is going to replace us as human beings. I don't think that it does. I think what it does is that it complements us as human beings. You know, a robot doesn't have a soul. As a human being, you will continue to have a soul. There will always be a need for human beings that interact with these robots and human beings that ensure that we are able to create value, embracing the reality that 4IR brings us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Butaki, at Bridgestone, what are some of the changes that you are seeing in the opportunities that you currently have?
Thank you, and I appreciate the call for allowing me to be in this house and to share what Bridgestone has got to offer. And just like what Dr. AB said, I don't think we are far apart from how the world of work has been impacted by artificial intelligence. Maybe before I get into your question, there are 4 developments around this 4IR that I think we need to be cognizant of, and maybe Professor Marola has touched on that. And firstly is the question of the high speed of mobile internet. Okay. Secondly, artificial intelligence and automation. Then you've got data analytics, and ultimately you've got cloud technology. Now, as an organization, we are not immune to the effects of artificial intelligence and automation, especially where employment is concerned, but also on the data analytics, because that's coming quite strong. Now, what do we do as Bridgestone? The Mercedes car, when it moves out of the workshop, it moves there because it has got shoes. And luckily we've got a relationship, and those shoes come from us. Yeah. And as you has alluded, we need operators who help us to build the tire. But then that has also shifted over some time, because you needed somebody who's an operator, maths and science come, and then we teach you how to build a tire. But ladies and gents, we've got almost 100 machines at Brent's plant. And these machines, there's an interplay between the human being, the machine, and some algorithms, as AB has said. So what we're focusing on is to build capacity of our operators, to build on top of what they have, so that they understand how to operate machines, and also build, produce the tire that we'll ultimately need on our roads. So the other aspect, I don't know how many people know of Super Quick. Super Quick is a franchise that is owned by Bridgestone. Now we've got what we call the fitment technician, or wheel alignment technicians. And these are fitters that when your car comes into a fitment center, we need to align it. Yes. Previously, that alignment took an hour to do. But because of the 3D alignment technology, that can be done in 20 minutes. Wow. So that has not necessarily threatened the job of the fitter, but it has given us the opportunity to upskill and reskill our operators, so that they can be able to, the fitters, so to say, so that they can be able to operate those machines and ensure that your car moves out of those fitment centers safe, because we touch your brakes, we touch your steering wheels, you know, all of those things. So we need somebody who's competent enough to be able to take care of your car. And maybe just in closing, just on this point, just to support what Edu was saying, is that the fourth industrial revolution, you are right, is not going to totally wipe up human beings in this equation. I like to say that robots do not have social and cognitive skills. So you're going to continue to need those skills. So that is on the technical part of the business. But we also realize that for the organization to continue growing, we're still going to invest in some skills that are not going to be, that will not be replaced by AI, like your customer service. I mean, once we sell you a tire, probably you would not appreciate us to send you a voice note via a machine dealing with you as part of after service. That human touch will remain relevant. So sales and marketing skills will continue to be relevant. And there are certain skills in the profession that we are in, which is HR, that will not be replaced by machines, like your organizational development. Yes, we might be having some of the jobs in HR, like your administration and recruitment, that significantly will be impacted by artificial intelligence, but they will still remain with us going forward.
I want to stick to that theme. So obviously there are declining jobs, but there are also emerging jobs.
Yeah.
And can you give us a sense of these emerging jobs. So we've started chatting about sales and marketing, customer service, the fact that if I was an HR practitioner, it's probably not a waste. I could move into organizational development. Do you have more examples that as young people we can look at and say, okay, these are declining, but these are emerging. I can try and position myself for these. I can try and reskill myself for these, and so on and so forth, just on a broad scale. Because some people are worried about the declining job, but I read a paper that said McKinsey is suggesting that although there are jobs that will be obsolete, the net effect of jobs is actually going to be an increase.
Yep.
But if you are sitting and you are not sure where to navigate towards, which skills are young people can try and acquire that might position them for the emerging jobs?
Well, it's evolving, right?
Okay.
Because the pace of the revolution that we're seeing now is such that you are forever having to reinvent yourselves. I mean, if you look at big data, for example, it's a space that we don't have a lot of capacity in. And if you look at South Africa, for example, I mean, that's definitely one of the areas where we are still lacking in terms of capacity. So there are various spaces within the context of 4IR, big data analytics and whatever, how do you deal with robotics and so on. That's, a space that I think still has a lot of opportunity. Does it mean that we no longer require engineers? Does it mean that we no longer require HR people? No, we still require those skills. It may well be that we don't require them to the same level that we have needed them before. But the one other area that I think as South Africa we need to critically explore is what I call the obsession with everyone having to go to university. And I know Prof may not necessarily like what I'm going to say, but where we have lost the plot as South Africa is to think that jobs such as artisans aren't sexy enough, or they're not cool. And therefore we wanted to encourage everyone not become an engineer. We don't all have to become engineers. This country will still need artisans. And this country is running short of artisans. That's where we need to be looking at. We messed up, I think, in reconfiguring our education space the way we have. We have watered down the artisan training colleges. We have watered down nursing colleges. We've watered down teacher training colleges, and so on and so forth. And that's what this country desperately needs.
Sure.
Yes, we have to encourage people to go to varsity. We have to encourage people to study. But guys, the other opportunities that are there for us to follow, as I say, artisans, if you look at, I don't know how many plumbers we've got in Orange Farm. And I don't know how many of those plumbers are from Orange Farm. I don't know how many electricians we have that are from here. And by the way, these are fields that you can monetize, right? You go there, you get your qualification. Yes, it's hard work. I mean, I'm used to artisans taking at least about 3 to 4 years before they are ready for a trade test. But once you have completed the trade test, opportunities are out there for you to pursue. And we need to start rethinking the way in which we approach education and rethink the way in which we approach the opportunities that we perceive to be out there.
Sure.
There will always be space for all of us. But let us start looking at areas that are today not receiving the attention that they deserve.
Angithi sifuna ukugqoka amasudu.
No, stand suit, but ungayigqoki suit as an artisan.
Yes.
So, you can start your gig as an artisan, you can start your own workshop, you can start your own shop, and maybe you will wear a suit. But, these suits mean nothing. They're not taking us anywhere. They're not taking us anywhere. What is important for me is what benefit are we able to derive from the suit. So it's good and well for me to walk around in a suit, but not being able to derive any value out of that. But for me, those and I mean, I don't know. I grew up in a township in the northwest where you would have a time who fixes cars, and you knew that your car, once it goes through this guy, will be sorted out. I grew up in a township where we had one electrician, Ndatemnaisa. And you knew, if you had a problem with electricity, that's the guy.
Yes.
We don't have those Manaisas today. We don't have a lot of them. We have a lot of us that are, obsessed with, we want to wear suits, we want to make this much money and all that. It's good to make money, but you need to sort out the base. And you need to make sure that you've got a much more solid, much stronger base for creating wealth than what we have today.
Totally agree. You just made me think. I don't think I've ever seen an unemployed artisan.
No, never.
I've never seen. If an artisan doesn't have a formal employment, it's because they have a business. Finish. There is nothing in between.
You will not find one.
Sure.
In fact, you will find that whether you look at public sector or you look at private sector, one of the areas where we have a shortage of skills is artisans. And that's because this country is not producing as much artisans as our economy requires.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. So I think we also made a mistake by assuming that learnerships were replacing apprenticeships. I still remember a time when apprenticeships were quite sexy. When you said you were a boiler maker, you are the one who, maybe I'm a bit old, you are the one who commanded respect amongst the Machita to say, wow. And I think we're going to get that back. For you, what are some of the additional skills that we can put in?
Okay, maybe just to add on that is that I'll just make an example. I had just signed up with one of the investment houses.
Sure.
And every time I wanted to check how my investments are going, I had to drop an email to a administrator who looks after that. And the other time I asked, but guys, don't you have an app for me just to have control in my hands? I don't always have to go to the browser and type or to call. So what I'm saying with that, what I think also the youth have got to look at is the space of software and app development. It will continue to be with us for quite some time. In my previous life, and probably in the life that you are in now, when you want to go out there and you do business online, it is not easy just to drop a note on Facebook and think people will follow you. There are people currently who study social media. And how do you then drive traffic to social media? So I haven't seen any course in universities about how you study social media, but I know providers who go out there and do digital marketing, because companies are going to be big and they're already starting to be big in digital marketing. And that is another career that is coming down the line. So I agree with the whole issue of artisans, but there's another thing that I would just like to add, and just a little bit about suits. Sometimes we have to be careful about the syndrome of looking good but going nowhere. So let's look at the importance of the role of artisans in the country. But I think you have expanded so much on it. What I would just like to add for people that really would like to follow the artisan route is not only about understanding the technical competence of what you do. I don't know how many of you, now I've experienced it. Someone who takuhaka, I don't know, but they are going to paint the wall. So they stand there and look at the wall and they say, hey, and then you say, but how much do you charge? You say, hey, I'll give you what you ask for. And that is why sometimes people do not build themselves as artisans. You know, so what I'm saying, I think I'm allowed to say this. Sometimes you bring a white artisan into your house, and they stand there and just look there and say, "You'll pay me 500 for that square meter."
Yeah.
And say, "Well, how did you arrive at 500?"
Yeah.
They will tell you. But our guys, unfortunately, cannot do that. So I'm saying, as we go into these trades, let's also build the business acumen behind those trades so that you are not taken for granted. You know, I've seen it. Kidula Kwalbatin, and most of my work is Agotogos. Let me tell you, some of the guys, when I go with them, some of my friends, and this guy says, I say, "How much do you charge me to do 1, 2, and 3? Let's say to build me a gate." And they say, and I'm just throwing a number, and they say, 3,000 rand. This person, this is 2,000. And let me tell you, the person who knows the job agrees to this person who does not know the job and ultimately charges me 2,000.
Yeah.
What is your value? Do you understand and do you know your value? If you can get to that point, then you can start to flourish. You will avoid the syndrome of when you get one job, you want to price so that you close the gap of the 9 jobs that you have lost.
That's solid advice. Mina bengizoshaya izandla ukuthi hayi sengisho mina bengizozishaya. Serious. I think you are raising a big point. Another big element of the future, not even the future world of work, the world that we live in, is that we are now getting information that soft skills are actually more critical now than ever before, right? Because we were always told that, no, focus on the hard skills and so on and so on. What are some of the softer skills, business acumen you've just mentioned, that will help us navigate this world that we find ourselves in now?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, I would say one of the reasons why Katela River, the way Rivangating is, at times we're trying too hard to make a quick buck, man. And you make a quick buck that is not sustainable. You know, you make the 10K and then you start splashing. And we know Bafana, so, you are it. And that's one of the things I believe. If we are to sort out our problems as a nation, we need to attend to that. You talk about soft skills. Soft skills will always be critical. If you look at something like problem solving, which we don't often appreciate as much as we should. You look at how you build relations, how do you network. In my world, the strength of your network enables you to do a number of things that maybe your peer will not be able to do. Let me illustrate this. If I today wanted to help bring a business into South Africa that doesn't exist today in South Africa, you can, whatever that business is. The only way in which you're going to be able to do that, apart from, of course, knowing exactly what your business is all about, it's about networking. It's about knowing which points you need to touch. It's about knowing who you need to speak to get what. And I'm not talking about brown envelopes here, because that's another sickness that this country has. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about genuinely knowing if ke tlo bua le Masiza, and I say to Masiza, I want to speak to so and so. He's going to help me to do that. And he's going to help me to do that because Masiza may well come back to me and say, you know what, I need to speak to Spiwe, and I know how, and we connect that way. So networking is a very, very critical, so-called soft skill that we will need going forward. But in the end, as I said, whether we are in 4IR or whatever the space that we are in, human beings will continue to matter. So the ability of us being able to relate to each other And I always say, relate to me first as a human being. Relate to me as A.B. Khotle from Itsoseng. Before you put a title behind my name. And once we start relating to each other at that level, it becomes a lot easier for us to do a number of things that we have to do. So, you know, and I know it's difficult to encourage somebody who maybe has spent a number of years looking for a job and they haven't been able to find a job. But the one thing that I know is that the opportunities remain. They may be limited, but we remain to have opportunities as a nation. It is about identifying those opportunities. It is about pursuing them with as much vigor as we can. And it is about, in the end, ensuring that we are all bringing our collective or our individual efforts to collectively impact our society a lot more than we have done in the past. And I mean, you know, the reality, Vanabesi, is we will always need a number of the things that we have today. So yes, I mean, some of us, I grew up watching, and I think Usana Lin Nawen, we may have grown up watching Bumekaiva.
Yeah.
Right? And if I told you today that autonomous driving is here,
sure,
you'd probably not believe me, but it's here. Right? If I said to you electric mobility is here, you would probably say, Wahlanya. I mean, Eskom, Arnam Tlakas, and what if you. But these things are here. And as they advance more and more, they create different sets of opportunities than the opportunities that we have today. And the question is going to be the extent to which we are able to identify and we're able to address and, you know, attack or take up those opportunities and use them to the full.
I love that. So there are certain hidden opportunities, and Butaki, maybe you can comment about this. So as much as the issue of 4R has some disadvantages, but it has also opened the world so much. So suddenly, if I have data, I can approach somebody on LinkedIn who is in Australia, who is in whatever, and approach them with any opportunity, with any question. Would you recommend those kinds of things? Is it frowned upon, for example, to inbox you on LinkedIn and ask you a question about opportunities? What is the protocol around that? Just some nice guidelines around what is the right way to even approach people on some of these platforms that this world has opened us up for.
Okay. You know, I think, if not mistaken, it was the World Economic Forum that says mostly 25% of companies have indicated that automation has created new productivity enhancing opportunities. Sure. And that's where, for example, your LinkedIn comes in. And your question for me goes back to what AB says about network. But networking on the cyberspace should not necessarily be totally different from networking on a face-to-face. Because we are human beings. We need that type of connectivity. I think one of the things that I personally struggle with sitting in my chair is that people just want business. And immediately as they connect with me on LinkedIn, the first thing, I don't know whether it's automated, but the first thing that happens is that, you know, I deliver this program and I would sit there and say, shucks. But we don't know each other. You know, yes, exactly. You know, so I think that in that space, we need, in my view, from the connectivity, we need to remove a bit of desperation and build that connectivity to some extent. You know, it might take even to say, hi, would you mind to share me your email? Would you mind me to share your contact number so that I can introduce myself? You know, I'm not saying that is the perfect way, but what I'm saying is that build a bridge between the introduction and accepting the invite and starting to get into the business. I know people say, hey, we don't have time, we just want to run. Yeah, we want to make money. But to be honest, those, I don't know how many people I represent, but for me, that has always been a killer when people just go into those conversations and it becomes transactional. So, but I think the other part of it in terms of introduction that youth can start to do is that when you see a AB Hotle on LinkedIn or any other platform, before you go to them, what they do, and in the area of fitter development, I probably see that this is the opportunity that you want to develop without offering any solutions, but acknowledging and indicating to the next person that you understand their world and that you can just nature. As human beings, we are hardwired for connection. We are not hardwired for transactions.
We're hardwired for connection, not transaction. Can we have some few questions on the floor and online? We have a question there. Just before we go there, there's this issue of when people try to apply for jobs, I guess as HR heads, some of your team members have implemented some smart recruitment. If a qualification wants a degree and I have a diploma, it will probably just eliminate me completely. I think it's automated to say, if you don't have this, you can't do this. Is there any